Hello and welcome to Mastering in the Box. In today's video we're going to take a look at how we can get our songs sounding louder without using a limiter and without over compressing our tracks. Hi folks, Smudge here and welcome to Mastering in the Box. In today's video we're going to take a look at how we can get our songs sounding louder without using a limiter. But before we get into the content of today's video, if you want to know more about digital mastering, then make sure you hit that subscribe button below and make sure you tick that bell and select all to receive notifications on all of our videos moving forward. And if you do want to support the channel and if you really like the content you're seeing, then check out some of the links in the description down below of where you can support the channel through buymeacoffee.com, and any support will be greatly appreciated. So let's get into the video. One of the most frequent questions I'll get asked is how can I get my track sounding louder without sounding overly compressed, squashed, lacking energy, lacking dynamic range and life? Well, the simplest answer is to not overcompress the track. And one of the default moves for a lot of people when it comes to mastering is to reach for a limiter, starting to push a load of gain into the limiter, but what they don't realise is a limiter is in its simplest form a compressor, and the more volume you put into the limiter, the more gain you use with the limiter, the more dynamic range compression you are going to get. So what's the alternative solution? Well, I've long been discussing around normalising audio and how we can use this function to increase the overall volume, which effectively takes away some of the difference between the peak level and the digital ceiling, and how we can raise that level and raise the overall volume without applying compression. But then what we then will generally do is add a limiter after the fact as a peak catcher rather than a volume booster or a volume knob. In today's video I'm going to show you a different technique by using a clipper, and how we can use a clipper to get a slightly different sound but get the same attenuation to ensure we are not clipping and going over the digital ceiling. So let's take a look. So I've imported the song file into Studio One, and the song we're featuring this week is the song Symphony of Silence by Magician's Nephew, and this is another track that's available for download through the Cambridge Music Technology website for you to practice your mixing and mastering on. As per normal, there'll be links in the description down below, so check those out. And it's the same song file, just duplicated and put onto two separate tracks. The blue track is going to be the limited version, and the orange track is going to be the one where we process using the clipper. Both tracks have been normalised, so in Studio One you highlight the track and you press Alt and N and it will normalise the audio for you. So I'm going to start by getting the level meter open here, and the level meter I'm using in this week's video is the stock level meter from Studio One, and we've got it in R128 mode because we want to measure in LUFS. I've selected the LUFS measure down the bottom here, and you want to make sure this box is ticked here, the EBU plus 18. If you do not tick this box, your meter will cap at minus 14 LUFS. So you want to tick this box to extend the scale. So if you don't, then whilst the integrator will measure correctly, your short term and your momentary will cap at minus 14. So make sure you tick this box to extend the scale. And then let's take a look at the limiter. With the limiter here, as I say, we've got the ceiling of minus 1.9. I'm going to treat this very much like a digital release. So I'm going to treat this as if I was mastering this for the digital distribution platforms and the streaming platforms. So I've set the ceiling at minus 1.9 because the true peak level, we want to try and keep that below minus 1 dB. That is the recommendation from the majority of the streaming platforms, so that is what we're going to look for there. I've applied a couple of dBs worth of gain. Most of the volume increases come from the normalising of the audio, but we've applied a couple of dBs using the limiter. You will note that the overall loudness, the integrated LUFS measure, will be over minus 14. I'm actually achieving levels of around minus 11.4. That's not stupidly loud, but it is louder than the minus 14 obviously. A lot of people will ask why. Because the song can handle it. I feel the song sounds better at minus 11.4. I don't think it's one of these songs that really that's comfortable at minus 14. So I'm mastering this to a high level. I appreciate that streaming platforms may look to normalise the loudness at -14, that's fine. I'm not a big believer in doing different masters for different mediums, so if we can get this to translate well for digital, it will translate well for CD. We don't need to do different masters for different mediums. If we're louder than -14, that's fine. It will translate when they normalise it to -14. That is not an issue at all. So, as I say, we'll get it to around about -11.4, and without further ado, let's take a listen to the song.
Yeah, so much noise, but still no way to say. Hey, hey, what know? I say hush, listen to my battle cry as I sing you my lullaby, and I come here ready by inside my symphony silence, symphony silence.
Okay, so as I say, we're using the limiter there, we're getting some good volume in there. The short term and the momentary, they're at the loudest is -9.9 lufs. So we're not really loud, we're not excessive. Ignore the integrated measure here because we haven't played the song all the way through, so it's not going to give us an accurate reading. But we know, let's say, by playing this through, I know it's at 11.4, so it's a good loudness. The thing I want you to note here, the reduction of -3.74 dB. Now, it's not an uncomfortable compression. I didn't feel it was kind of really squashing it too much. But if you're happy with the dynamic range, then you don't want to really reduce it too much at all. So what's the solution? If this is where we feel comfortable with the level, but we're not quite comfortable with the gain reduction, then what can we do? And this is when we can start to look at tools such as a clipper. And let's go on to the clipper next. So the clipper plugin that I'm featuring here is the free clip by Ven Audio, and as it says here, it is a free clipper. It's a free plugin. Ven Audio is the manufacturer, and I'll leave links in the description down below. Get a copy of this. Even if you don't use it that often, it is a great tool to have in your arsenal, so check this one out. And I don't want to get too into the technicalities of clipping and how a clipper works, but let's just think about, we need to kind of consider what clipping is. And if we've heard of digital clipping, and if you've got the digital ceiling at 0 dBFS, if you get any signal that is too hot, you get clipping at the digital ceiling, and it creates that awful harshness, that distortion, that unpleasantness that we don't like. And as I say, technically it will clip the peak, it will cut the peak off and create that awful harshness and signal degradation that we don't want. But if you think about the technicalities of what clipping does, where we got compression, if we use compression for a limiter, you are reducing both the peaks and raising the troughs, and you are reducing your dynamic range. Well, a clipper isn't working in that way. A clipper is literally clipping the tops of the peaks, and you can boost the gain and it will boost the overall gain, but it's just clipping the tops. It's not reducing as much dynamic range, so it can be really useful if we can get around those challenges of the distortion, that awful harshness and that signal degradation. And if we can get around that, then actually what a clipping does in its technical form can be very useful, and that is exactly what a clipper plugin is going to do. Now, a clipper plugin can be used for distortion and saturation, but we're going to use it in a mastering context here, and we just want it to attenuate the peaks. And the way it's going to work here is we set a ceiling, and it's the clip ceiling. This particular example, I've got the clip ceiling at -1.9 dB, and I've added 1.8 dB's worth of gain into the input. The clipper style is at hard because we want to use this in a mastering mode. If we use it in more of a softer style, then that's going to apply more of a saturation and distortion. We don't want that. We want it in hard clipping mode to attenuate those peaks. Now, once again, I don't really get too into the technicalities here, but when it comes to clipping, it can introduce aliasing. I won't go into aliasing, that is for another video. But what you do need to know is to try and get around the aliasing, you need to put this into oversampling mode. I have gone for max at 32 times oversampling, and the post oversampling clip at ceiling is the selection I've made here. So let's take a listen to the track with the free clip engaged.
The tales you never heard.
So once again, we've enabled the volume, we've increased the volume of the overall track by using the clipper. We've got a true peak value, which is nice and within the recommendations of the streaming platforms, and we've got the volume up to a nice level where I feel comfortable. So we've actually been able to do this without applying compression, because the clipper, I say it's clipping, it's attenuating the peaks. We've increased the volume, but it's applying no compression. So it's one of the benefits of doing this. But let's hear this in comparison. What I'm now going to do is flick between the two tracks, and you can take a listen to what the limited version is doing and what the clipper version is doing. So let's start with the limiter, and I'll flip between the two. So we're achieving a similar level in terms of volume, but one of the things I'm noticing here is the clipper, it's a much more open and natural sound. So if you use a limiter where it's applying the compression, it is tightening the sound up, but it's making everything kind of almost fold in a little bit. Whereas the limiter with the clipper, it's making everything open and breathe more. The high end is much more articulate, and you can get more of those airy tones from the vocal. So let me play it again at the end here and just take a look. Listen out for things like the hi-hats and the brightness of the track and the air of the vocal. They're things that I certainly noticed that the clipper brings out in the track. And another thing as well, take a listen to the kick. The kick with the limiter, it's much more, there's much more weight to the low end, but it's almost kind of like a muddy weight. With the clipper, it's much more open. So take a listen to the kick as well. For me, I much prefer the sound of the clipper in this particular scenario. For me, it's just a much more open and natural sound. And whilst compression isn't something to be worried about, it's not something to shy away from, a clipper can give you a different sound, it can be more articulate, and it's certainly in this particular instance, it's allowing the high-end frequencies to really pop out. It's much more open in the low end as well. The kick is much more, it breathes more. When you get too much kind of, low end mud, it can start to really affect the clarity of the track. So if you don't want to over compress your track, but you want to get some loudness, you want to attenuate those peaks so you get some more of that control, but say you really want to get that open and natural sound, use a clipper. Try a clipper. Boost the overall volume with normalizing, and then use a clipper to kind of get some overall gain. You're not going to start to apply a lot of compression to the track. It's really something I think you should check out. And if you want to get your track sounding louder without sounding squashed and over compressed, then maybe the clipper is the option for you. So check it out. Okay, so that's it for this week's video, and I hope you found this useful, and I hope it's just given you another tool and another technique that you can use to improve your mastering workflow. I see it more often than not where so many people recommend using a limiter, use a limiter, use a limiter. A limiter is not always the best tool for the job. There are lots of scenarios where limiting can be great, but it can also be very bad. And if you're getting to a stage where your masters are becoming very squashed, they're losing life and energy, and the dynamic range just isn't where you had it at the end of the mix, Don't use a limiter. Maybe try the clipper. The clipper will still attenuate those peaks by clipping those peaks, but it just allows the song to breathe a bit more. It allows it to be more open, whilst also preventing that clipping. And that's really what it is. It's trying to get the song to the loudness that you feel comfortable with, while giving you the best sound quality as well. It's a free plugin from Ven Audio, free clip. I'm not affiliated, I'm not paid to make this. It is just a great plugin that I think you should check out and really add to your arsenal. So if you do get it and you do download it and you use it and you have some great results with it, then let me know in the comments down below. I'm always really keen to understand whether you guys are getting some real benefit from these videos. So if you are, then please let me know in the comments down below. And if you use it, great, and let me know how you get on. And if you do want to know more about digital mastering, then make sure you hit that subscribe button below and make sure you tick that bell and select all to receive notifications on all of our videos moving forward. And last but not least, if you found this useful and you do want to support the channel, then there'll be further links in the description of where you can support the channel through buymeacoffee.com. And I say whether it's just buying me a coffee for a £3 as a small token gesture, or if you want to join the membership scheme is alive, it's running, I'm adding content to it each week, so check that out as well. And so we'd love to have you part of the Mastering the Box community as well. So all that's left for me to say is I hope you'll keep safe and well, and I'll see you in the next video coming real soon. Coco, I don't really need you on my shoulders while I'm trying to do this video. Can you jump down, please? Coco! Hey.